Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah! Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Mana 18. J. King Jam, pick it in the B-roll. Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Jay-Z White in the catalog. Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The kids are legends to go. Still Poddable, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah!
I just had to go to a bathroom.
Everyone, welcome into another edition of Still Poddable. My name is Brian Robb. I'm joined today by regular contributor to the show, Ryan Bernardoni. Follow him at Danger Cart on Twitter and Threads and wherever else you are on social media these days. This is the free episode of Still Poddable here streaming on the CLNS YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to them there. And we are sponsored by Prize Picks and Game Time. Make sure you can sign up for those by using the promo code CLNS. And you can check out Still Poddable any day of the week, Monday through Friday at patreon.com/Still Poddable. All right, Ryan, we are here. We are 3 weeks into the NBA offseason. And I don't know, how do you look at this NBA offseason to start right now? The Celtics ran it back. There's been a lot of other happenings in the Eastern Conference more than the West at this point. But just broad overview right now, how do you like where the Celtics stand in relation to the pack in terms of what's happened in the last few weeks here?
Yeah, it's all gravy. Nobody can hurt me. I don't care about anything. It's all good. I mean, they won the title. Like, what do you? If they had lost at some point in the playoffs, and I was looking at the 76ers loading up and the Knicks moves, and Brunson took a discount, what's that going to mean? And the Thunder added guys without losing anything, and why I can't believe they got Caruso without giving up any. I don't care. They can all do whatever they want. It's all gravy. None of those teams are going to be as good as the Celtics were last year, and the Celtics are running it all back. And they didn't, they're going to, obviously there's a couple of guys who aren't going to be on the roster who I'm sad to see go, but hopefully they get new opportunities somewhere else.
You're going to miss Fee that much?
Yeah. And, I'm guessing O'Shea is looking for a better opportunity based on what Brad said yesterday, but, or today or whenever he spoke, I don't even know. No other team can hurt me right now. Like, I don't care what anybody else is doing. They're all very cute and nice, and I'm sure their fans are happy and excited, and I've been there. But like, the difference between winning it and coming close and not winning it is so enormous in terms of like summertime mindset. It's been a while since I've had this. But it all comes rushing back. It's like, I don't have to care. I just don't have to care what any of the rest of you teams are doing. As long as the Celtics aren't doing anything that's like making me incredibly angry, which they obviously have not. I am thrilled. I am happy. So yeah, I mean, it's been a nice offseason for what they've done and what we were hoping that they would do as a front office and a franchise and all that. But you don't stop smiling, right? Every once in a while, you just sit there and you think about it, and you're like, "Oh, this is great. This is the best." So that's how I'm doing. How are you doing?
They got their work done early, so I'm doing great after that. When there's not going to be any waiting by the phone in August and September, that's for sure. As we wait for the 15th guys, I know it is. It's like the talent wise. I mean, I guess here's the one thing though, like the owner, like this team is up for sale. Does that clearly is not spoiling your good vibes here, but I guess when that happens, I'm curious from fans, like from your, as a very informed fan standpoint for you, like, is that a potential good thing for keeping the team together long term, or going the other way, knowing that they've got one in the bag here and could certainly pile up one or two more in the next 3 or 4 years before things really have to get dismantled here? But from that standpoint, like what was your general reaction to that, and how this is going to potentially play out here, given the fact that this might actually they want to happen, Wick hopefully will start to close on this at least in the upcoming season. It seems like.
I can't imagine it's going to matter this coming season very much. I mean, obviously, it sounds like they want to get the business done this coming season, but like the roster is going to be locked in.
It's not going to impact anything for now.
Like, are they really? If they're going to get an owner that's so wildly different from what they had that all the players suddenly fall into a deep funk and don't want to play anymore? Like, I don't know. It probably doesn't matter for next year. Down the line, we've been looking at it for a while and sort of saying like, they had last year, they have this year. Beyond that, there will have to be some difficult decisions made. It's at least possible, either because they bring in somebody so wealthy that they don't have to care and like really don't have to care at a large dollar amount, or you get sort of new owner syndrome where it's like they just don't want to make the difficult decisions about the roster that somebody else might have, or they sort of baked into their expectations that they were going to pay a whole bunch of luxury tax the first year for goodwill, and it's just sort of the premium on the price that they're paying anyway. So it's possible that it buys them another year before they start to make moves to cut back on some of the costs that we all kind of assume are going to come at some point, just because of how incredibly expensive the team would get otherwise. So that's possible. It's also possible that they bring in somebody who's sort of similar means as the ownership that they've had to this point, and they still have to follow the right. If it's Pags who buys out the team, then like would they change the sort of path that it looks that from the outside that looks like they're on in terms of spending? Maybe not as much. So we don't really know. But like, I don't think it's going to impact this coming year. And if it impacts 2 years from now, we kind of think that it's going to impact 2 years from now, even if they weren't selling the team, right? So like, how much worse could it be?
In my mind, I could be like, is it better versus worse in terms of like?
Yeah, the only problem is if somebody comes in with enough money to not have to care about like a $300 million luxury tax, then you're going to have to look away at like how they made their money.
Right. Maybe not an owner you want to be rooting for anyway at that point.
Yeah, not that I really want to be rooting for any of the owners, but like having local owners who are also fans before they bought the team is a nice thing to have. I'm not out there saying pass the hat around for billionaires one way or another, but the ownership group that the team has had for the last 2 decades is one that has local ties and were fans of the team coming in. They weren't buying it as a sports washing thing or just some investment to flip or because they were trying to sell casino, whatever. So that stuff is what it is. But like, I can't imagine that it makes a whole ton of difference on where the team is now. Now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it could be a sea change in, getting owner A versus owner B and how they operate. But for the immediate, I can't imagine that it makes that much of a difference. And those other bigger questions, like even if we knew who the owner was, we would have no way of really answering what that means unless there are people who own other teams as well, which they may very well be. That might give you some indication of how they would operate in the future. But like at this point, I focus on next year and try to win another title and deal with the rest of it later.
The blueprint, I mean, I don't think any owner anywhere will walk into a better roster situation in real time than they'll ultimately get here. So it will be interesting to see again how much of it is just, leaving everything in place from a staffing standpoint. Obviously the player stuff is what it is on the spending front, but certainly from the front office to the coaching to, the business side, everything like that, there's always uncertainty when there's a big shift like that. But if they keep it in-house there, I'm sure that will be smiled upon by many. And if not, there's certainly plenty of reason to forever comes in. But that does leave just again, not really anything for next season. As Brad Stevens was asked about last night in Las Vegas, he was, it surprised me too, but it doesn't really change anything for them now. Like until those tough decisions come, until someone else gets in place, like they're operating obviously status quo, and that's has been a good thing for this group. We saw the extensions. Jason Tatum squeezed that player option out of them, Ryan, for that on the Supermax. Derek White got that player option too.
I think they earned it.
I'm sure.
feel like they earned it. Yeah.
I feel like that was a pretty good negotiating standpoint for both those sides there. So the only intriguing thing here left that has kind of not gone of late, but Sam Hauser and the Celtics obviously can talk and can officially could do an extension at any point now, as we are into mid-July. So what I want to look to here, Ryan, is we know the realities of the situation here. Hauser's on a expiring deal of $2 million heavily underpaid, and I believe will be now an unrestricted free agent next summer. But there have been a number of free agent deals, not, exactly comparable to Hauser as a player, but just the same ilk of maybe at least price range. And so I'm going to run down a few of these to you here, and I'm curious to see if you think just the market as a whole, as well as some of these being handed out, is a good or a bad thing for Sam Hauser in his camp as they weigh extension versus hitting the open market. So we got KCP 3 years, $66 million from Orlando.
Yep.
Monk got 4 years, $78 million from Sacramento. Klay Thompson 3 for $50 from the Mavs. Obi Toppin $458 from the Pacers, which I'm not sure how many is incentives in that, but that seems like a lot for Obi Toppin. And then the other side of the coin is like you got Melton for 1 for 12, Buddy Hield got, I think, 9 a year from the Warriors. Kyle Anderson 9 a year from the Warriors. Caleb Martin 8.5 a year from the Sixers.
Somehow only 8.5.
Somehow only 8.5 years.
Half of Obi Toppin or whatever. Not whatever. Like,
right. Yeah. Just again,
whatever.
The math on some of these.
That's a heist, but yeah.
Right. So like looking at those two sides, like what side do you think Hauser's ultimately going to end up on? The high side of that group in the top 4, or more around like taxpayer or just regular mid-level and below, just based on how this is going to play out if assuming he's not going to sign that extension with the Celtics?
I think he's better than a lot of those players, although I don't know if the perception of him is as good. Name recognition, whatever. Like he was 7th? I was looking at it yesterday. I think he was 7th in the league in cumulative plus minus, even though he played 22 minutes a game. Like the Celtics killed it with him on the court last year. And things like EPM, stats like EPM that are like heavily on off base, they think that he's very, very good. And then there's like the kind of eye test stuff where some people look at him and go, oh, he doesn't have the fastest feet. He doesn't have this and that. He's, he's a goofy white guy. Like, I don't know. He's a damn good player. He's turned himself into a really good player. And so I would expect him to make, into the teens per year. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but that's like mid-level, like you said, or around the mid-level. There aren't a ton of good teams next year that have a lot of spending power, but he's also one of those players who, in that range and at his age, I think a lot of teams could look at and who are trying to say like, well, we have this young player, this group of young players that we want to develop, and they need spacing around them. We need to build a team that makes sense around them. We want to get the right kind of role players, shooting, and the things that help you sort of elevate that type of player and properly evaluate them in a setting that makes sense. So I think there would be a lot of teams that would be interested in him. He's not going to go for $35 million a year, or if he does, like, God bless him for having the greatest next year we could imagine, and the Celtics winning the title again. Otherwise, if he wants to play so well that somebody pays him $35 million next year, great. But you figure, teens. And teens for the Celtics means $120 million in salary and luxury tax. And are they honestly going to pay $120 million to retain Sam Hauser when they just drafted as close to a like-for-like replacement for him as you could imagine? So the fact that Brad Stevens has signed now a double-digit number of extensions, with Jason's extension on the board as well, I can't like rule out that they'll extend him. It would be nice if they do. It would be great. It's not my money, all those reasons. But like at some point the cuts are coming. And getting one more year of him out at this rate and then replacing him with the guy that you just drafted at 30, can anybody really complain if that's what they do, with what the team has delivered already? And you look at teams like Denver letting their starting shooting guard walk for that kind of money. Are the Celtics going to get ripped for letting their 8th man in their rotation walk for that kind of money? I don't think so. So I'd love to have him back in the long term, but looking to next year, he's a super valuable part of the team. And, I think that there are a lot of teams out there who'd be interested in him.
Yeah, I mean, from a Celtics standpoint, for beyond next season, the extension possibilities come in twofold in my mind. It's like, one, do you get him at a really team-friendly number if he's willing to take it, a la like Peyton Pritchard? Like, you're obviously not getting him for that cheap, but like closer to $10-11 million a year, just because he wants to lock that up. And then knowing that, A, that's just going to be a good contract no matter what you want to do with it, or B, maybe someone else with making a lot more money has to go out the door, and that makes it much more feasible to keep Sam Hauser at at that type of rate, and it just bumps him up the pecking order of the team. Now those are again decisions that clearly aren't going to be made anytime soon. But as Brad Stevens hands out these extensions left and right, he's certainly, I think, trying to give himself in the front office that type of option if and when they're going to have to start scraping away from this core in the summer 2025.
Yeah, if he wants to sign a super team friendly thing, then any team should do that. That's why we call them team friendly. Like, yeah, if they can get him on that deal, and that's what I mean by like, I can't rule out that he will sign an extension just because they've signed so many extensions, and maybe he loves it here. I don't have inside information on this. It's just like if they sign him for $10 million, they have a $300 million luxury tax, and they still need to fill 4 more spots at $2.5 million a pop. Like, right, even if you get some second round picks and stuff in there, like you're talking just about money that stacks up really quickly. And so, yeah, like you said, if the thinking is we don't want to go too far down this path, but like necessarily like picking players and teams and all that. But if the idea is like, yeah, they're going to have to trade Drew anyway to cut costs, and they would, they're thinking that they would elevate Hauser to a bigger starting role, and that $10 million is fine in that type of future path or something like that, then you could talk about that even a little bit more. It's hard to even sign him with the thought of like trading him because you have to take money back. And if the whole point is like, you just can't add any more money because it costs so much, again, without knowing who the ownership group is, that's also a difficult decision to make. Like, can the ownership group now, knowing that they're going to sell the team, commit to signing a guy who would mean $100 million additional luxury tax next year? Like, I don't know, maybe they just do it and that's the next guy's problem. So there's a lot of stuff in there that like, we just don't have anyone knowing. And I'm not ruling out that they would sign him, but I think that he's proven himself to be a quite valuable player in the league, and that he should get signed for quite a bit of money. And whether that the Celtics can afford that or not, or can even afford to sign him and trade him and take back, matching salary from another team, or obviously you could trade him into cap space. Like, there's a whole lot of ways that it could play out down the line, and we can't foresee all of them. But it's all kind of quiet now, right? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of noise out there about something coming, and there wasn't for the Drew extension either. It seemed like it had gotten almost oddly quiet, and then it popped up, and it was like, oh, it's done. So it could happen right now while we're talking. I don't know, but I think that he's just played himself into an amount of money that's like hard to expect the team to pay, even if I would like the team to pay it. And like I said, I mean, they literally just drafted another guy who's like plays the same position, and not in the exact same way. We've seen in summer league that Shireman plays a little bit different than Hauser does, but like broadly similar player of like, this is a wing, primarily shooter, not a great defender, but like a stout defender looks pretty strong. So you can't just like run him over and take advantage of him on stuff like that on the defensive end. And like, it's a very similar player, right? Like, anybody can look at that and be like, maybe they just drafted his replacement, right? I mean, that's kind of what happened.
Totally.
Hey, do you know what's fun summertime activity? Going down to Fenway and watching the Red Sox play baseball. I did it a couple days ago, and it was a lot of fun, and I got there using Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and with last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. If you went on Game Time, you could have seen the Boston Celtics celebrate the World Championship with the trophy. Joe Mazzulla looking like a second baseman there. Game Time is the absolute best place to get last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find and buy MLB tickets for any other kind of event in your area. You get to view seats from the venue. And again, that has that lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. It's got everything you want, including zone deals, all-in pricing, and ticket coverage. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And I don't know, like with Hauser though, in his camp, like, I don't think necessarily when we go through these deals and just look how this offseason has, what it's been like for random free agents around the league and how many teams are just not using their like full mid-level period. Like, it's
the way
not
it caps teams and the way that the teams are dealing with the luxury tax is increased next year, all these aprons and hard caps and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, you could look at it and be like, we don't think there's going to be a ton of money out there.
right. So it's like, whether, with that said, like, we obviously don't know how exactly what the Celtics, like how team friendly the Celtics are really looking for a contract for him here. But it is where I would think that how this summer has played out certainly did not necessarily help Hauser's camp from a leverage standpoint in terms of being able to point to other deals, be like, okay, we know this is going to be out there next summer. It's more of a, you have to, between the lack of teams that have cap room for next summer at this point and the navigating the aprons and how these teams are looking to operate, like, he obviously can get a good deal somewhere, but it may not be what he dreamed of after, seeing whatever Emmanuel quickly get $35 million a year before free agency start.
Well, and 2 years ago, he'd be looking at Duncan Robinson and saying, like, I can get Duncan Robinson money, right? Like, that type of player. Now you might be looking at Buddy Hield and be like, oh, am I actually going to get Buddy Hield money? I mean, I think Hauser has an advantage on both of those players, or should across the league have an advantage of both of those players, that he's a better defender and that you can play him more. And like these guys who just held up in the playoffs on a championship team in the finals, right? Like, you look at those players versus some of the other guys that you're comparing him to. And Duncan Robinson has had big moments in the playoffs too. Like, I'm not diminishing that those players are also good players, but yeah, the difference between a couple of years ago versus now, where the new CBA is kicked in and you have all these different restrictions, even if it ends up playing out next year where there is a little bit looser with some money in that kind of mid-range pricing, right now it's just very hard to predict that. This is just an unknown factor. So if he's happy here and wants to lock in the money, and the Celtics are comfortable with the amount of money that would mean in luxury taxes, or that they would have to cut in other places, or whatever it might be. Again, like, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen or that I'd be surprised. I just, as a Celtics fan, there have been times in the past where you would be disappointed or kind of almost angry as a fan of, like, I can't believe they didn't get this done. How do they not work it out? Right now, it's like coming off a title with the amount of money that they have committed, with all the resources they put in, and an ownership change and all that kind of stuff. My point is more like, it is completely understandable if they just go into the season and like, listen, we can't make this commitment right now. We understand that it's a risk because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. We'll have his bird rights. We'll play it out next year. We did just draft protection at the same position. So, we'll play it out.
Yeah, they're set up quite well
there. You couldn't rip them for doing that.
No, of course not. I think that's my assumption, is that's how it ends up. But looking at, I mean, you brought up Duncan Robinson. It is fascinating to see just as like a career arc like that. And like you said, like, Hauser's a far better defender than Duncan Robinson, but that, Duncan hit, he had that, that second and third year were just amazing years for him in the league. And then he has, I think, just been, he was 26, 27 when he signed that deal, and it's been, on a downward slope. I guess he had a bounce back year this past year, but certainly went from a guy that was like one of the most feared shooters in the league to being like, oh, can we even, can we play this guy? Or is he coming off the bench for us on, in their run last year to
That's
the
the
finals?
Advantage for Hauser, right? For the advantage for Hauser is that because he's a better defender, his threshold for how cold he can go from shooting and still be playable is just higher than like Robinson's is, where it's like, nobody's ever going to leave Duncan Robinson alone, right? He will always provide spacing and he will always provide shooting. But in the times when he's not shooting well, he doesn't do enough other things. And he's added things to his game, like cutting and moving and stuff like that we've seen Hauser develop. Well, like, I think they're broadly similar players, right? Like, this isn't a surprise to be using him as a comparison. But we've seen from Hauser, especially I think in the playoffs, it's like he went through cold stretches this year in the playoffs, and he never felt totally unplayable because he was still out there defending well enough. Like, I mean, we saw, like, he would get switched onto Luka Doncic and you weren't like freaking out about it, and they weren't having to like scramble, send crazy, doubles and traps in him or anything, because it was like, yeah, it's not ideal, but it's totally fine. And then with the spacing gives you, so that's what my point of just like, he fits in very easily on a wide range of teams. Like, would a team that's totally tanking want to go out and pay him $15 million? Probably not, although with the salary floor, I mean, God knows what, maybe. But anybody from who's like a team that has young developmental players, right? The Pistons went out and added a bunch of shooting this year. If he was on the free agent market, he would have been a target for them because they're saying, we need to give Cade Cunningham spacing so we can evaluate him. A team like the Warriors, who went and got Buddy Hield after losing Klay Thompson, who's trying to be more competitive, the Celtics themselves, the 76ers, like a lot of different teams at different times in their cycles could be interested in him. But like you said, new CBA this year, money was a little tight in some ways, in other ways, not so much if you're Emmanuel Quickley, but it's just unpredictable now because we're only so, early in this CBA, and some of the components of it haven't even really kicked in yet, that if you're his agent, if you're him, and the team comes to you and says, here's 4 years, $40 million, last year's a team option, do you want to take this? Right? Like, he might. But he could also look at it and be like, no, I think I can just get more money than the next year. Look at what Duncan Robinson got, and that was a couple years ago. And we're getting all this new TV money. What do you mean I can't get more than that? So it's hard to say. But very good player. And I would expect a very good year from him this year. Again, I don't know why you wouldn't, right? He's really good.
You want to guess what he shot in the Pacers series?
Like 0%.
2 of 16.
It was really rough. I mean,
1 of 14 from 3.
And then Pritchard in the next round misses everything other than a half-court shot,
except for the heaves.
And both of them were fine though. Like, that's my point.
I know,
like, ups and downs come, but they're very good players who you can just keep out there, and you don't have to like freak out and like drop them out of the rotation entirely when those things happen.
To your point, Hauser was 1 of 14 from 3 in the Pacers series. He was still 38% from 3 in the playoffs. Like, that's incredible for a 20-game stretch to have.
Yeah, and I know it was a sweep.
Balance it out that well.
I know it was a sweep. It was relatively close in terms of points. Like, I don't know what his plus minus was in the Pacers series, but like, I don't.
Been that bad.
I just don't think there was any time when those guys, because they can do more things than just shoot, even if that is their primary skill, that just reaching that baseline of like, you are a good enough defender where even if you aren't shooting well, you can still be on the floor in late playoff series is a really high floor for defense, for defensive level for the Wings. And like, he has become a legitimately fine, average wing NBA defender, better than a lot of guys who have much, older guys who have much larger reputations as defenders. Like, Hauser's better than a lot of guys who, when you hear their names, you're like, no, he's a good defender. You're like, oh no, he's actually 34 years old and hasn't been a great defender for 6 years. Maybe he was at one point in his career. Like, Hauser's better than a lot of those guys. And he has a flamethrower, like, right? And he's 6'8" or 6'7", whatever he is. So I don't know. This is where we are, right? We're at the point of the offseason where it's like, it's Sam Hauser talk for 15 minutes because like they're NBA champs and the summer league is the summer league. And, they've signed up all their other business so definitively and early. Like you said, it was all done early. Like, what do you have to talk about? Like, oh, somebody's new coming in for ownership and we don't know who they are. And how much would you pay Sam Hauser, right? Like I said,
these are the important issues right now. These are good problems to have. If this is your biggest problem, these are good problems to have.
These are the best days of our lives. Yeah, we're good.
This is we've had too many crazy summers, right? We've had too many trades in August, sign and trades, seasons blowing up and back and forth over the last
trade for
5-10 years.
I think we're okay now.
I think we're okay. I think Brad's
nothing's coming.
I don't think anything big is coming.
Brad's
next summer we'll see.
Brad's
but this
summer,
summer,
I think we can get in the Lowry Markkinen business. You don't think so?
Just get
he and Danny are going to throw something out and throw something. Just keep you all on your toes in August.
I know you you wanted to get Drew Holiday last summer, so
Porzingis too. Apparently they were.
That's right. So
they were the other team for Porzingis. If they hadn't worked out the extension and sign and trade, the extension whatever and all of the sadness of who had to go out on the last minute. But that's the rumor, right? He was going to Utah.
Yes. Yes. I can confirm. Yeah, that was very much out there. All right. So enough Sam Hauser. We haven't talked just general NBA. We'll keep it to the East. Unless you want to talk about how much Russell Westbrook signing with the Nuggets kind of sinks them further down in the contending rankings, but we can get to that.
You don't think it puts him back into the top tier? Back with this, he's a former MVP. Like, top. Think about how many more MVPs they have than the Celtics.
Well, here's my question though: is that going to be the Celtics in like 3 years? Of like those are the moves that this team is going to. I mean, yeah, like that's sure. Except it's going to be hopefully Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince and not Russell Westbrook.
100%.
But I guess, but for now, we know where the Celtics. I think we both share the same opinion of where they stand versus the Pack this season. For the long term now, out of all these, particularly we'll focus more in the East. I think because the West is pretty clear with the Thunder being the clear cut, best long-term contender out there. But who do you think is set up the best to be the main challenger down the line 2 years from now, potentially even now, if injuries start hitting the Celtics roster based on what they've done?
Yeah, in the immediate, I would say the 76ers, particularly from a playoff perspective. We'll see. Like, we all know the caveats there. It's if Embiid is healthy, he's never healthy. So, but what can you say? Like, you can't say that he definitely won't be healthy and that Paul George definitely won't be healthy when it comes to playoffs. Their team, if it's fully healthy, seems, in part because they're just like, they have things that are different than the Celtics, seem to be the biggest risk now. They probably get a couple of years out of that team before some of their guys get older and some of the costs get exorbitant for them as well. But you figure they have maybe another year or two in their window than the Celtics do. So that, you would say them first. I think most people at this point are jumping on the Knicks. My feeling about the Knicks, and I don't know if you have similar feelings on this or not, is that the Knicks are basically a poor man's version of the Celtics. Like, they're building a team that's got this kind of like wing depth, but like, if you do the exact same thing as the team that's better than you, but they do it better than you, it doesn't give you necessarily a matchup that you can exploit in a way that helps you. Whereas like Embiid, you can imagine a healthy Embiid exploiting the Celtics having Porzingis and his health issues, and that he's not particularly like the type of defender who's normally worked against them. And Al Horford's going to be another year older. With the Knicks, you're just sort of like, you're following the Celtics blueprint to the best you can, but like at every position other than point guard, you're not as good. So like, what's the benefit there? So, I mean, those are the guys at the top, right? Like, do you jump anybody else into that? Does Gary Trent and Giannis and Dame and all that put the Bucks up there with them as well, do you think? Or where are you on the top guys in the East for, let's say, 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, the Sixers, I'm with you from a pure like talent standpoint. That makes the most sense in terms of how they're built. And you like some of the role pieces they're putting around George now. The injuries of them, I still think like are as high as anyone. Like, what are the odds that team is going to stay healthy for 4 rounds? The answer is unequivocally very low based on the track record of George and Embiid. I do think, though, like the Bucks being able to add, not above replacement level players for like with Prince and Trent Jr. And I know Middleton just went under ankle surgery. So I guess it's a situation where it's like,
double ankle surgery, right?
Double ankle surgery. Like that's not great. So I don't know. It's like, for all the injury questions that like Porzingis has, and it's like the Bucks and the Sixers have that same amount, if not more. And then, like you said, the Knicks, I'm with you in terms of being like that's a fun team. I think it's a team that's going to win a lot of regular season games. But when push comes to shove, if everyone's, man for man with the Celtics right now, like you still love the Celtics for at least next year, maybe longer than that.
So I think there's a thing that's happening right now, and I do this as well, where because Porzingis is already hurt, people are comparing full rosters of other teams to the Celtics without Porzingis. And they're saying, well, that team could challenge them. And it's like, yeah, well, if 38-year-old Al Horford is their starting center and the backup is Luke Cornett, then there are teams that are more well-positioned to challenge the Celtics. If their starting center is Kristaps Porzingis and their backup center is Al Horford, like we just saw how good of a team that is, right? Like these other teams, I don't think have that ceiling in them. Now, will the Celtics arrive in the playoffs with that team? And we can't say that. But like to your point, all those other teams have injury risks and injury questions as well. OG Anunoby has a lot of injuries. Giannis has had a lot of injuries recently, right? And Lillard is older, and Brook Lopez is as old as Al Horford, or I don't know about, right? Middleton's got his 2 ankle surgeries. Jalen Brunson hasn't had injuries to this point, but he's the size and the age where you at least have questions about how his body will hold up playing the volume, the minutes that he has under Tibbs and all that, let alone Embiid and Paul George. So I think there's all of that stuff about injuries and about health. And like, you just can't predict all that, but I don't think that any of those teams can compare with that. So I want to actually ask you something that I kind of posed on Twitter as like my ruminations about the Eastern Conference. If you take the Celtics and don't rank the players in total, rank the 5 player, like take their best lineup and I think you should do this with Porzingis, but even if you want to do it with Horford, you can as a center. And think about them on offense and defense, like 5 players on offense, 5 players on defense in their best lineup. So White, Holiday, Jalen, Jason, and KP. Is there any team that has a better, worst defender or better, worst offensive player than the Celtics anywhere in the league? And I come up with a couple like maybes, but in the vast majority of cases, not only do I think, even among good teams, not only do I think that the Celtics have the best, worst player, I think other teams have 2 worse players on both ends of the court than the Celtics in their best configuration do. And when you get to the playoffs, like the Celtics can attack Tyrese Maxey, right?
Like defensively, I think it's an easy one.
Damian Lillard. The Celtics can leave alone Mitchell Robinson, right? Like on offense or defense. So can you think, like, are there teams out there that you're like, boy, you know, that team has fewer weaknesses on either end of the ball than the Celtics do? And I don't really come up with anybody. I can throw out some of the ones and you can tell me if you think that they're better or not. The ones that I can sort of come up with, because I know it's a hard thing to think through the whole league. But like, now that the Bucks have signed Gary Trent, if Chris Middleton is healthy, like giving everybody magical health, is the Bucks' worst offensive player better than the Celtics' worst offensive player? Who I guess is either Al or Drew or Derek. Like, I don't even know who it is. It's Al. If Porzingis,
it depends on the night. It depends on the series. Like that went from series to series in the playoffs. And the answer is like no. Like I don't like based on
right?
Like right. It's like
is the Pacers' worst offensive player better than the Celtics' worst offensive player? Like they have Siakam and Miles Turner and Halliburton's amazing, but like you get to a 5th guy and you're like, I don't think so, right? Is the
what's OKC's starting 5? That's the one that like
the Oklahoma City
now.
Thunder's worst defensive player better than the Celtics' worst defensive player? It's probably Jalen Williams. Is Jalen Williams a better defender than Porzingis? I don't know. Like Kristaps Porzingis was really good on defense last year. They're obviously very different players, but like you just go across the whole league and you say, okay, so the Celtics have the 5th best player, whatever argument you want to have about Jason Tatum. They have the 18th best player if you want to be negative about Jaylen Brown, and better than that in the playoffs. So they've got really good top players. They just don't play anybody who has a weakness on either side of the ball. Like they have no one-way players, and all these other teams that they're going to go up against all have guys who at one end or the other, you can leave alone on offense or you can target on defense. And when you get down to it in a playoff series, the Celtics don't have those guys, right? So like how bad can you ever feel going in? You know, they give you nothing to worry about is I guess my point, other than health. And like, what can you do about that?
And that's honestly, that's like with Porzingis coming off a major surgery, without like how good is Cornette and Tillman and Kata going to be good enough again in the regular season to keep the Minnesotas off of Al and put the Celtics still in position to be the 2 or 1 seed in the East? And maybe they won't, and maybe Joe Mazzulla won't care. Be like, we don't need home court. Like it's nice, but we're not gonna run down now.
We suck at home in the playoffs
because we suck. What good has it done us over the years? Like we might as well go on the road for 3 series in a row. So yeah, that's the question. Is like it all worked so well last year for a variety of reasons, and it's all in place to like in theory, Tatum and Brown should be better, and Derek White should be better again this year, and like Drew should be right. They won't be like
they will not be.
But
they will not be a plus 11 team next year.
Yeah,
they have 3 guys at the Olympics. They're coming off of they have injuries right to start the season. They might be a 60-win team again, but they are not going to set the record for most 25-point wins, most 40-point wins.
That is fair.
They just realistically,
just based on the competition too.
There's no reason for them. Like they will. We've just seen it so many times through our history. They will not push that hard. I can't imagine. The question is, if they win 58 games and they're the 2 seed, can they still go through the playoffs? And like, I think the answer to can is absolutely yes. You can't say for sure will, but like, there's just nobody in the East. 3 years from now, totally different question. 2 years from now, maybe. Coming into this year, and 2 years from now is a financial question, right? Coming into this year, again, other than the things that we have that nobody has any control over, like health, while I think the 76ers have had a really good offseason, and I think the Knicks have had, especially now with Brunson signing this big discount, they gave up a ton for Bridges. Okay, I understand that, but like just their team on the floor this year is going to be very good. The stuff that, like you said, that the Bucks have been able to do with minimums looks really positive for them. I really like the Pacers. The Pacers were a pain to play, and if you get first third of the year Halliburton for an entire year, the Pacers are going to be a nightmare to play. Like, I think there's a lot of good teams in the East. I don't think there are any complete teams in the East on both sides of the ball like what the Celtics present right now. And I guess I just can't get off that in terms of like my evaluation of where all these teams are in the offseason.
No, I think that's fair. And I think the one team that I think could, well, I don't know if they can get there now, but if the Knicks trade Randall for like, but I don't know now what he gets
Ryan
you.
Arcidiacono.
Yeah, like if like what other Villanova player is Kerry Kittle still around there? No, it's a situation where I feel like if they find the perfect fit in place of him, or like to be the stretch guy to replace Hartenstein, whatever. But now that they've traded pretty much all their valuable draft picks, I don't even know if that deal is even out there for them, where they could get one more, not like all-star, but one more difference maker that complements what they have in place. Then it's like, okay, then that could be a rear handful.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that deal is out there.
Like, right. I can't get there because I still look at it and I just go, you are going to put Jalen Brunson on the floor for 42 minutes, and the Celtics are going to run him through the ringer on defense for 42 minutes. Like, the amount of pressure that they can put on that one player is extreme. And yes, it's good that you have Mikal Bridges who can take some of the scoring load off, and you can have these other guys and you can come up with all these systems and you can try to do all these things. But in the end, they're going to call Jalen Brunson, who's 6 feet tall and has to play with a 30% usage and 40 something minutes a night up into every single in the playoffs and at a big game. They're going to call him up and he's going to have to defend over and over and over again. And we've seen how the Celtics for years, Brad Stevens is coach and Brad Stevens is executive and all of it, wear guys out in the playoffs, right? The Celtics have these two like Iron Men unbreakable wings who can just carry this load because they don't have to do certain things that these other smaller players or bigger players like Embiid do. And like the Celtics are just so good. And we saw it in the finals with Luka, right? They just are targeting these guys over and over again until you can try to crack them. And so even if the Knicks were to add another guy, it's like, is that guy going to be better than who the Celtics are like than his counterpart on the Celtics? And that's yes, I understand that Randall he isn't a great fit, but they would like, what would they be adding? Because they're going to play the Villanova guys and OG, and there's one more spot. Yeah, like right, like that doesn't. It's a center. You're talking about adding a center because you're worried about Mitchell Robinson getting hurt, and like it's not going to be. Who is that going to be?
Daniel Tice.
I mean, Brooke Lopez, like, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, right. I mean,
that's the type of player. Like, is there an older player who is also a stretch and can also protect the rim? Like, no, he's already on a team that's also trying to contend. Miles Turner, no, they just went to the conference finals. They're not trading him. Like the guy who you're talking about, I just don't think exists. And even if he did, like if you added Miles Turner to that team, would I suddenly be like, oh boy, now the Knicks are going to win? I would just be like, no, I think the breaking point for them is that they have a small point guard, and the Celtics are like built so well to destroy that guy that I just can't, like I said, I feel like they're just the poor man's version of what the Celtics are doing. And the reason that they're the poor man's version is because they have these certain things you can exploit versus Giannis or Embiid, who you're just like, maybe on their best night, you just can't deal with those guys. And maybe they have 2 weeks where you just can't deal with that guy for 2 weeks. And like, they are not built the same way as the Celtics. They have these things that can be different. And the Celtics have had great success against those teams in the past. So even then you can't like freak out about it, but you're just saying like, I think the Knicks could have a better record than the 76ers in the regular season because the 76ers will try to get rest for George and Embiid. But like when it comes to the playoffs, if you're asking me which of those teams I'd be more worried about in a playoff series, it would still be the 76ers just because of that like differentiating factor that I don't think the Knicks have.
And playoff P.
Sure. Why not? I mean, he's a really good player. Like I can't knock it, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, but
that contract might age very
has
badly.
not been great.
No, but like that, and that contract may turn into a disaster, right? It's possible. But under their circumstances, like I don't know what else they could have done better than what they did.
It's a dream scenario for Morey.
It's just
what else were they going to do? What else was going to if
absolutely.
Clippers? What would have happened?
Like you can look at the different signings that they made and the different potential weaknesses on the team and be like, I don't know if I want to be paying Paul George that amount of money that far into the future. Okay, what was your alternative? Like, what is the better thing that's out there? Brandon Ingram, right? Like you said, you're going to trade for Jeremy Grant and have 5 more years of Jeremy Grant making $28 million, or would you rather have Paul George while Embiid is 30 years old, right? Like, it's no doubt about it. They had a great offseason. It's just that the Celtics are a really, really good team, and it's the bar to get better than them is so high. At least the bar of what we saw from them last year, right? Like one of the 10 best teams in like NBA history. I don't know. It's really hard to get over that bar for all these other franchises right now. So they're just going to wait. They're looking out, like you said, 2-3 years in the future and saying when the bill comes due and the CBA starts to bite pieces off the Celtics, then who's in the best position to be there? That's when you start to talk about is that, the Knicks, okay, the 76ers, okay, it's probably the Thunder or whoever's coming up with the next super team a year from now.
Well said. All right, let's wrap up. Lightning round, summer league hot takes, Celtics or league wide. What who's playing the most minutes on the Celtics summer league team in this year outside of obviously Niemi's an obvious one, but who actually might play a random back-to-back nights when Alan Porzingis and other guys are out?
So it has to be in Boston. It can't be in Maine. I mean, Shireman's going to play, right? He's going to play some. The wing depth is so deep, and the Celtics wing, like the Jays play so much when they're healthy that it's hard to break into that rotation. Like we said, Hauser's really good. I think he will play some amount. Maybe if they sign Hauser to an extension, you would say that would be less than that he would play less. But I don't know how much Mazzulla is really like planning out the succession at that position and stuff like that. Springer played one game, played well. The defensive stuff that he brings is nice. They have to make decisions on him. You could see him playing some amount. All these guys are like the Celtics. Nobody's breaking into the Celtics top 9. No. So unless guys get hurt, and if the guys get hurt, then whoever's at their position will get an opportunity to play.
Anton Watson center when
sure.
Al Horford and Porzingis is
probably
out.
Not, but I wouldn't have thought that Cato was going to get any run last year, and then he got some amount, right? And he got his moments. And now he's yet another guy who would be in front of Anton Watson to play. Is Watson even actually a center? Like I don't even know.
No, I mean he's
what he
like,
really is. He's more of like a positionally sort of a name we already said about Kyle Anderson, sort of positionally like that, where he's like younger
Grant-ish.
Yeah, like
he's a lot different player than Grant, but like certainly
like he's
similar versatility.
6'9"-ish. He's bigger than Grant. That's why I'm like Kyle Anderson. Like he feels like he has a little bit more on-ball juice than you would think for a center. Not like he's very energetic and it seems like a smart player, but like a younger.
6'8" for
he's not. Kyle Anderson is so specific of a player because like you're comparing an energetic guy to a slow-mo, right? But like I'm talking like the younger player and how he made plays on defense. Like he was a defensive playmaker without being a crazy long-armed, that like Jordan Walsh looking type of player, but still a defensive playmaker or I don't know, Nick Batum kind of thing, right? Like later Nick Batum, early that type of player is what he kind of feels more like is his future as like a defender, but he's not going to play for this team either way. So I don't know. None of these guys are breaking into the rotation if it's not a back-to-back with injuries. That doesn't mean that they're not good players. It's just a very difficult rotation to break into.
It is. It's been a rough summer for Jordan Walsh, but everyone else is.
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, but he's got guaranteed money for at least one more year, so he'll certainly get the reps in Maine and see where he's at next summer.
And right? Like it sucks. Summer league is one of those things where like it's 2 games, it's 3 games, like
and it's a sample size is small, but
so tiny, but it's all we got. So it's okay.
But when the spotlight's on you in your year 2,
like, oh my God.
and you got competition at your position, like that's Yeah, it's tough when the
outplaying the number 2 pick though, so you got
right,
that.
Not so much. All right, that's gonna do it for us here at Still Poddable. Again, thanks again to Ryan Bernardoni for hopping aboard. Again, make sure you're following him at Danger Cart on Twitter and across Threads, Blue Sky, wherever you get your social media these days. You can check out us at Still Poddable at patreon.com/Still Poddable Monday through Friday. Get ad-free Celtics podcast every day of the week for myself, Jay King, and Sam Jam Packard. We're going to be back next week with Summer League wrap-up. And then Ryan, just one more. We had no Olympic talk today, but we're closing in on the start of the Olympics here. It's going to be a great summer for basketball.
Point, yeah. Celtics basketball too. Yeah,
right.
They're going to win. They're going to hang the Summer League banner, and we don't hang. The Celtics do not hang in-season tournament banners, but we are hanging that Summer League banner if we get the Summer League banner. And
will they incorporate gold medals into ring night? If
there will be, I mean, if not for the politics around it, there would be a potential for a really wonderful Celtics picture with like the Larry O'Brien trophy, Jalen with the 2 MVP and the 3 guys with the gold medals. I don't think it's going to happen just because of all the stuff about not being on the Olympic team. But that would be quite the picture. Would be the 4 of them together with all the silverware, goldware, whatever it would be. But I feel like maybe it's not going to happen now.
They should make it happen regardless.
I hope they bring the medals home though. The team looks really good.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. We'll be all over that, all over Summer League recap, and much more all summer long here at Still Poddable. Thanks for listening. Thanks for having us here on the CLNS YouTube channel. Check them out there as well. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable, the Boston, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah!
Go down from eating and drinking and all that wild stuff.